and welcome to the Nexus. It has been 6 months now since the first coronavirus case was discovered outside of China. A 61-year-old woman flew directly from Wuhan to an airport in Bangkok and was tested positive on January the 13th. More flights from China continue to spread the virus around the world, and the WHO declared a pandemic 2 months later on March the 11th. More than 500,000 people have died with COVID-19 in the last 6 months. Well, over that period of time, we've spoken to a lot of people who are involved in the scientific endeavours to bring about a vaccine and more effective treatment. So now we're going to look back at what they told us at the time and then check in and get an update. We're focusing on 3 people in particular. Dr. Ruan Barnabas is testing hydroxychloroquine in Seattle. Diana Berendt had COVID-19 and is donating her plasma for research. And Dr. Paul Mackay is leading the search for a vaccine at Imperial College London. Let's start with vaccines and our report from March.
The vaccines stimulate production by the body of billions of protective antibodies which build a wall. But behind it all are tests and research and years of development and hope. Simple. Is it?
A British scientist has apparently made a breakthrough in the race for a vaccine.
A team of Australians is trying to develop a vaccine.
South Korean researchers have discovered antibodies.
Researchers across the world are working to create a vaccine to tackle the novel coronavirus.
In the race to contain the coronavirus, a win for the first to cross the finish line with a vaccine or a treatment is a win for all.
Work is underway on a vaccine in a number of labs around the world.
It really is a race against time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Pharmaceuticals giant Sanofi today confirmed it's jumped into the race. The company joins Johnson & Johnson and biotech company Moderna.
American businesses are stepping up.
The race for a coronavirus vaccine, which companies are leading the pack?
Yeah, we are comfortable that we can create a vaccine and scale it up.
We're trying to do this in, for us, what will be record-setting time. We're going at record speed, getting into clinical trials, but that's not something that's going to impact people that are sick now or this first wave of the outbreak.
Since vaccines are given to normal individuals, what is paramount is safety and whether or not it works.
There are a lot of people that will get sick and a lot of people that will unfortunately die before vaccines become available.
The good news is we did it fast. The bad news is that the reality of vaccinology means this is not going to be something we're going to have tomorrow.
Now, you're at the animal testing stage right now, the first laboratory outside of China to reach that stage. What results have you had so far?
So the results have been very good. We have got reasonable responses in mice, and we are also doing various different experiments in mice, and we're also testing it on in monkeys. That testing in monkeys also started this week, so we will have a good set of preclinical data very soon.
Some people will be a bit concerned that you have to test on animals, but that is an absolute necessity at this point?
It is an absolute necessity. You cannot replicate the immune system in vitro. We make great efforts to reduce the number of animals that we use, but you can't completely replace animals at this time.
And when are you likely to move on to testing in humans?
Well, we're hoping to move on to test our candidate vaccine in humans by about June.
I understand there's another laboratory called Moderna, which expects to be testing sometime at the end of this month, March, or early April.
Absolutely.
Why are they slightly ahead? What's the difference here?
So they are a large company. They have a lot of people working on the development of the vaccine. We are a small laboratory in London, and we have done it almost as quickly as they have, but perhaps not as quickly.
And people talk about, indeed we are talking about, the race for a vaccine. Is it competitive amongst scientists or collaborative?
It's more collaborative than competitive. I mean, each individual, of course, has their own competitive nature and their want and desire to make a vaccine. But scientists are by nature extremely collaborative. We collaborate with a large number of different labs and collaborations in our DNA, so to speak.
And when do you expect to have a vaccine available for the general population?
Well, I mean, as you said in your introduction, it takes quite a number of steps to make sure that a vaccine is, first of all, safe, and secondly, that it has efficacy, that it's able to generate the immune responses that you would want it to have. And those testings are absolutely necessary, and they will take approximately 1 year.
And that, to put it into context, is incredibly fast. What is the typical time it takes to find a vaccine over the past few decades?
Typically, to get to the stage of even testing it in humans has been about 3 years. But in general, the amount of time it takes to bring a vaccine to regulatory approval is in the realms of 6 to 10 years. And 6 years is ambitious, and 10 years is more typical.
Now, obviously, the scientists, including yourself, are going at record-breaking speed, but it does mean that between now and for the next, say, 12 months or so, there's no vaccine. What does that mean for the population? They have to rely on treatments?
Yes. So, I mean, one of the interesting things about this particular virus is that there's a number of treatments which are indicated for other diseases, which have already been shown to have an effect on the replication of the virus within a person. So if you can give them an antiviral drug, then sometimes that can reduce the severity of their disease and or cause the virus to replicate slowly so that the body has got time to deal with it. And there's a number of different companies which are trying out the drugs that are already licensed for use in people to see if they have this effect. So there could be treatments that are available to the population while we're waiting for a vaccine to be developed.
And since we spoke to Dr. Mackay, he and his team at Imperial College London have begun small controlled human trials, which they hope to roll out to wider test groups later this year. Let's turn to treatments now, and one particular drug that has had a lot of attention, both as a preventative and potentially as a treatment for COVID-19, is hydroxychloroquine. The decades-old anti-malarial drug shot to prominence after President Trump started promoting its benefits earlier this year.
One treatment in particular has been getting a lot of attention.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine. I'm taking it. Hydroxychloroquine. Right now, yeah. I've heard a lot of good stories.
Hydroxychloroquine is a very safe drug. It has been given to tens of millions of individuals in the world since its approval.
This is a pill that's been used for a long time, for 30, 40 years on the malaria and on lupus too, and even on arthritis, I guess, from what I understand.
What does the science say about this drug?
We've gotten numerous warnings saying that people who have taken it have started to get heart arrhythmias, even fatal heart arrhythmias, and that means that they could potentially die from it.
Now, isn't that the final side effect?
All I can tell you is, so far, I seem to be okay.
He shouldn't be taking it. I mean, his own FDA has said it should not be taken outside of a clinical trial.
There's a very good chance that this has an impact, especially early on.
There is no evidence that tells us that taking hydroxychloroquine is either safe or effective for preventing COVID-19 infection.
What's driving this? It's a blind obsession to disprove the effectiveness of a drug that is being used right now, tonight, in medical centers across America.
Why would we ever think a Fox News star or any president should be promoting a drug? It's outlandish.
What in God's name is he doing? You'd be surprised at how many people are taking it, especially the frontline workers, before you catch it.
Tampa General Hospital is testing it as a possible way to protect their frontline workers.
British healthcare workers will begin taking part in a trial to determine if chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine can prevent COVID-19.
It seems to have an impact, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but if it doesn't, you're not going to get sick or die.
This information is provided for public education purposes only. Please consult a licensed pharmacist or healthcare professional before taking any medication.
Dr. Barnabas, welcome to the program. Let me start by asking you about the trial that you are overseeing.
Thanks so much, Matthew. The trial that I'm overseeing is the hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19 post-exposure prophylaxis. And the aim of the study is to treat people who have been exposed to coronavirus disease and prevent them from acquiring infection and prevent disease. So we are recruiting people who are in the household with someone who has coronavirus disease, and we are offering them enrollment in the study. And in the study, you either get hydroxychloroquine or a control. And at the end of the study, we will know whether hydroxychloroquine works to prevent coronavirus disease, and also we will have good data on its safety.
Now, you had a variety of drugs to choose from, presumably. What made you choose to trial hydroxychloroquine?
There is good laboratory data that hydroxychloroquine works. It prevents SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes coronavirus disease, from attaching to the cell, entering the cell, and it also stops the virus from replicating. And we've also seen in some observational studies that it can prevent individuals from acquiring disease. And while these data are promising, we really do need rigorous studies as the next step to test hydroxychloroquine efficacy.
And at the same time, while you're conducting these trials, we hear a lot of reports on the media about terrible side effects of the drug, even though it's been prescribed for 60 years and to 5 billion doses have been given out. So why does that not put you off continuing with these trials?
So this drug has a really long track history, decades long, as you said, of being safe and we're also able to use it among women who are pregnant, among elderly people, and given that it's really strong safety profile, I haven't been concerned about the safety. Also, within randomized control trials, we've been following safety very closely, and we know that for outpatients, people who are well, that this drug has been quite safe. There are concerns that have been raised about safety in the literature and elsewhere, but those studies were done among patients who were in the hospital who are quite sick to begin with, and they weren't done in a randomized manner, so we don't know for sure whether it was just people who were more sick who were getting the drug to begin with, and the complications they would have had them regardless of whether or not they received hydroxychloroquine.
Right. Now, there have been doctors on the television, on the internet, all over the place, saying categorically that hydroxychloroquine does not protect people from getting COVID-19 and is potentially very dangerous. Have a listen to one doctor in the UK.
Who on earth is prescribing this? I suppose he's the President of the United States. It's just so dangerous. And no, it won't be helping him one iota to ward off the COVID-19 virus. If he wanted to ward off the COVID-19 virus, he should lose weight. That is proven. We know that obesity puts people at risk, but taking this drug won't protect him at all, and it won't protect anyone else.
So, Dr. Barnabas, we have there a British GP saying, it won't help him one iota to ward off the COVID virus. Would you say that observations like that, remarks like that, judgments like that are a bit premature?
Yes, absolutely. Honestly, we don't know whether or not hydroxychloroquine works yet to prevent or treat infection. It's very encouraging to see the data in the lab, and some observational studies are encouraging, but we really need the gold standard randomized control trials to be able to assess the efficacy and safety of hydroxychloroquine. And in fact, all the media around hydroxychloroquine has made it difficult to communicate really straightforward messages, and we spend a good amount of time with our participants talking through exactly questions like this.
And has it made it harder for you to recruit participants?
Yes, we have had to have many more conversations. That said, once we are able to spend time with participants and talk through the pros and cons and present the evidence to date and the scientific question that we are testing, most participants are able to come with us on the scientific journey. However, we have had some participants withdraw, or their family members express concerns about the study, and the recruitment has been much harder than we expected.
Okay, let's move on to whether or not hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine can be used as a treatment for people who already have COVID-19. Dr. Christine Johnston is Dr. Barnabas's colleague there in Seattle. Dr. Johnston, tell us about your trial. What are you looking at?
Well, thanks for having me, Matthew. We are looking at whether hydroxychloroquine or hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin can prevent severe complications of COVID-19 in patients who are early in their infection and well enough to be at home. We are looking at whether these medications can prevent hospitalization and viral pneumonia, and also whether they can decrease viral shedding from the nose.
Dr. Johnson, I just want to make reference to a study that was published in the Lancet recently, which appears to be very, very discouraging, although they are looking at the effects of hydroxychloroquine on COVID patients who are already in hospital or in ICUs. And it says that actually taking it made things worse. The study was based on 96,000 COVID patients' data, nearly 15,000 of whom were given hydroxychloroquine or a related form of chloroquine, either with or without an antibiotic. And the study found that patients were more likely to die in hospital and develop heart rhythm complications than other COVID patients in a control group. Let's hear from Dr. Sapan Desai, who's one of the authors of that report.
Our study is one of the largest of its kind to be performed. It is high-quality evidence about how we should be treating COVID-19 patients in the hospital. Chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine both are associated with a higher risk of dangerous heart arrhythmias and an increased chance of death.
So, Dr. Johnson, this does appear very discouraging. Can you just comment on the data that the Lancet published?
Yes, so the Lancet article was a large study of many people who had COVID-19 infection who were sick enough to be hospitalized. I think the important thing about that study is that it was an observational study. And so patients were not randomly selected to receive hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. And we know in that case that there can be bias and people can be placed on hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine who may be sicker than those who are not. And that's why the evidence is compelling, but I think even the authors mentioned that we need the high quality randomized clinical trial evidence to really know what the effect of hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine are on COVID-19 infections and whether or not they're safe.
One of the authors of that report said that whilst hydroxychloroquine might not be a problem or produce any side effects in normal people, healthy people, in people who have got to the hospital level or the ICU level, that study would indicate it's of no use to them and perhaps actually makes things worse. Is there something about being in that state already, that's those severe, with handling those severe symptoms, that means hydroxychloroquine can exacerbate the symptoms?
Well, I think we know that COVID-19 infection can affect the heart and can cause a heart inflammation and some other cardiac issues. And that is why we need to study the medication and make sure that it is safe. It may have a different safety profile than it does in healthy adults who are outpatients. But again, I think answering the question is really only possible in a randomized trial. And that is our best way to show whether it works and whether it's safe.
Well, there have been many developments since we recorded that show. The Lancet report, which we referenced, has since been retracted after inconsistencies were found in the data. The World Health Organization and UK-based Recovery Trial have both scrapped hydroxychloroquine in their trials. But Dr. Ruan Barnabas and her colleagues at the University of Washington are still continuing their trial, but admit they are having a hard time recruiting people. Now, back in April, we spoke to an American woman who had got through COVID-19 successfully and was donating her blood plasma in order to help others. Now, we're going to be hearing from her in a moment, but first, a quick reminder of how bad the symptoms can be from another COVID survivor in London.
Please, none of you take any chances. I mean it. Because if it gets really bad, then you're going to end up here.
It doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what colour you are, and it doesn't matter what God you believe in. Nobody is immune to this.
I got ill a week before I came into hospital. I was just at home trying to recover. And then it hit me. Couldn't breathe, couldn't stop coughing.
Every time you take a breath, it's like glass. I was in the ICU for 3 days. I actually thought that I was going to die.
I am recovering really well. As you can see, I'm breathing better. I'm not coughing. I cannot wait to get home to my girls and my husband.
I was in the hospital for a total of 9 days, and I returned home, which was the best Mother's Day present ever. I returned home on Mother's Day to my family.
Everybody, please take care. We're all in this together.
Diana Berendt in New York. Now, you were infected during a business meeting in the city last month, and since recovering, you've donated your plasma to help others survive. Just tell us, how does your plasma help other people to fight this disease?
When I got the virus, my body reacted by producing the correct antibodies to fight it off. Not everyone is that lucky. So as a survivor, I have what's almost an internal hazmat suit built in. And that's a superpower that I can share with others. I just got cleared on Monday to be as free of the virus and positive for the antibodies. And as icing on the cake, it turns out that I am a universal donor. So as my doctor said, my plasma is liquid gold. It is turning out that the virus is staying in people's system for much longer than we initially suspected. And the reason that we're finding that out is because the only people right now in the United States who are getting retested on the back end of the virus, even those of us who had positive diagnoses at the beginning, are those people who are going to donate plasma. They are requesting that people come in at 14 days at a minimum, but at 14 days, almost everybody is showing up, is still having the virus. And so we're really looking for people who are 21 to 28 days out.
And Diana, how many people can one donation actually help?
Right now, the scientists are telling me for every donation, you can save 3 to 4 lives, and you can donate every 7 days under new guidelines.
And now you've set up a Facebook group called Survivor Core, and you help survivors connect with each other and with the scientific and medical community more broadly. How is this group helping in the fight against COVID-19?
So we are living in the wild west of medicine right now, and scientific researchers and medical researchers need survivors because so many of the answers to this virus lie in the bodies of survivors. So it's giving our blood and our plasma, but also doing research to figure out how long we are contagious for, how long we're shedding the virus, what are the methods of contagion, how do certain drugs react to the antibodies in our system. And by creating an efficient platform, we are flooding every single one of these studies with more volunteers than they can handle.
Well, that's good news. I understand that you're even receiving correspondence directly from different parts of the United States and perhaps elsewhere, asking for you to be flown to their area so that you can donate plasma to help them.
On the Facebook group, there have been more individual solicitations going out than I could possibly count. And we get those right to the top because we also have people who are answering the call. I saw the most beautiful post as I went to sleep last night. It was a woman in the group who made an announcement saying, "Great news, I just tested negative for the virus. I have the antibodies. This is my blood type.
Tell me where you need me. I will go anywhere you need me. I will donate. I mean, it brings chills to you. I mean, to think that it's rare in a lifetime to be able to save a single life. We as survivors truly can band together as not just as an American community, but as a global community to help stem the tide of this pandemic.
Well, since we last spoke to Diana, she has donated her blood plasma a total of 8 times, and the group she founded, Survivor Corps, now has more than 65,000 members. Trials are also underway to see if plasma can also prevent people catching the coronavirus in the first place. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you for watching, and remember, you can see all our previous episodes on our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Until next week then, goodbye.